Yes, we're back. Parsha Pals, thank you to everybody for tuning in. A little reminder, just everyone to mute yourselves. I'm sure whatever is going on on your end is fantastic, but we're going to save that for after. So this week, I'm speaking about, I want to share with you an idea that I've been speaking about in a bunch of different places a lot. And I think it's important, basically because there is a pasuk in this week's Sedra, which is absolutely ridiculous. Let me share my screen with you. And, please God, I'm going to try and lane it this week. And it's hard to keep a straight face. Everyone got the screen share coming up? So it should say at the top of your screen, this is ridiculous, which is sort of the most, realistic topic or realistic title I could give to this. Listen to this, right? This is what we're going to read in short from the Torah this week, okay? It's the golden calf, right? We made it out of Egypt, and we're standing around Mount Sinai, and Moses has gone up to get the tablets from God. We're going to get the Torah. It's amazing, fantastic. The Jews have, unfortunately, royally messed up. Moses comes down from the mountain, and he sees them jumping around a golden calf. Now, I want to rewind before Moses discovers the calf, before the Jewish people make a calf, the process involved in making a calf. This is what's happening, okay? The people come to Aaron and they say, look, we want to make a calf. We want to make a golden calf. Fair enough. Vayikach miyodam. And Aaron took the gold that they had gathered from their hands, vayotzar oso bacheret, and he cast it into a mold, vayaseyu egel maseichel, and he made a golden calf. So far, so good. We haven't, raised any eyebrows. We've made a golden calf, all right? Then the next few words come up. Vayomru, and they said, and this is the people who orchestrated the building of the golden calf, Eile Elohecha Yisrael asher he'elucha mi'eretz Mitzrayim. This is your God, O Israel, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. And what is going on? It's a golden statue that's been alive for about 5 minutes. And they're saying, oh, by the way, this is the force that brought the strongest and mightiest nation of the world to its knees, that brought you out of slavery in the most spectacular and glorious way. This golden calf that's been around for 5 minutes, and no one seems to have an issue with this. No one raises an issue. Everyone seems perfectly okay with that. And they're sort of like going around and dancing around it, thinking, yeah, this all makes sense, no problem. What is going on? Like, there must be something, a message that they're trying to reference to the Jewish people that they're okay with. But the literal understanding of this makes no sense. This is your God. It's not God. According to some opinions, the calf moved and it was slightly animated. So fair enough. You got a moving golden cow. It's not doing miracles and killing firstborns in Egypt. What is going on? And the answer to this is so important. I'm gonna need some volunteers. Let's go for 2 volunteers here. Can I give 2 volunteers? It's going to be a thought experiment, and you're not even going to have to give me any answers now. Who've I got? David, legend, all right. David, you're going to have to remind me about this one, but I need you to think of someone that you look up to. Doesn't matter who it is, and I'm not going to ask you who it is. It could be anyone in the world. It's not important. I just need you to think of the 3 reasons that you look up to this person. All right, I'm going to get back to you soon. So it's anyone you look up to. I'm not going to ask you who it is. Just think about the 3 reasons you look up to them, and we're going to get back to you very shortly. But we are going to digress, and we're going to go way, way back, or way everywhere, really. We're going all over the place. And we're going to start with a very basic translation question for you, folks. Just before we move on, this question reminded me of something that I once saw in a shul. Get this, I took this picture myself. It says here, the 10 Commandments tablets was presented by Mr. and Mrs. whoever it was on the occasion of the bar mitzvah of their son Stephen on the 23rd of April 1960. It's like, let me tell you one thing, folks. The 10 Commandments were not presented by Mr. and Mrs. whoever it was in 1960. in 1960. I've seen this plaque quite a few times. It makes me giggle every time. But this is basically what the Jewish people are dancing around. It's like the most ridiculous claim ever. And it's like, it's not God. This golden calf is not God. And they're saying, Eile Elohecha Yisrael, this is your God, Israel. What is flying? All right. So moving past the presentation of the Ten Commandments in 1960, I'm just hoping that we haven't lost some formatting here. Okay, let's hope we haven't. Who knows what the word nefesh means? Any takers for the word nefesh?
Soul.
Means a soul. Yeah, Sass, 100% on the money. The overwhelming majority of the time, the word nefesh means a soul. Except there are 3 times that I've found in the Torah where that can't possibly be the translation. All right? So hold tight, folks. Let's go to source number 2. This is talking about Abraham. Back in Bereshis, the book of Bereshis, he is trying to bury his wife who has just passed away. And he's appealing to Ephron and the Bnei Ches for a burial plot. And he says to them, Vayidber tam lemar, im yesh es nafshechem likbar es mesi milfronai. If there is es nafshechem, like if there is your soul to bury my dead in front of me, shamu ni upigu li be'Ephron ben Socha. And the word nefesh can't mean a soul there. No one's talking about souls. He's asking them. And the translation is, according to every commentator, if it is your wish that I remove my dead for burial, you must agree to intercede for me with Ephron, the son of Zohar. So we see the word nefesh over here. Doesn't mean a soul. It means to want something. And it happens again. Look at this in Shemais. This is more recently in Parshas Beshalach. Omar oyev. Erdof asig achalek sha'al timlo'emu nafshi orik charbi. And the foe said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoil. My desire shall have its fill of them. This is the Egyptians chasing the Jews. And there's this sort of battle cry. My desire shall have its fill of them. I will bear my sword and my hand shall subdue them. And again, the word nefesh means to want something. And it happens a 3rd time. Kisavo bekerem reyacha. We haven't read this yet this year, but all the way in Devarim, it says if you're a sharecropper, if you're helping your friend harvest their grape vineyard, and the Pasuk says, "V'achalta anavim kenafshach," and you can eat as grapes kenafshach. Now, folks, the word nefesh cannot mean a soul there. No one is eating souls in a graveyard, in a vineyard. That's not what's happening. And guess what? Everyone translates it quite correctly to mean you can eat as many grapes as you want. So there are 3 times when the word nefesh deviates from its classical translation, as Sass so correctly pointed out, of the meaning the word soul, and starts becoming something that you want. Now, this is quite curious, because they're the same word, the word nefesh. And they both, and it has 2 interchangeable meanings. Now, what's the connection? What's the connection between a soul, like Sass so correctly said, and to want something that we found nefesh must mean in these 3 psukim? How does that work? What's the connection between to want something and your soul?
Desire.
Sass?
Desire.
To desire something. Go on.
Yeah. So if you want something in your heart, if you want something in your soul, you desire it. So the desire part makes you want to have it. So it's the desire part of those translations that bring it into the context of what you're reading now. I don't actually agree with the translations, but when you look at how it's formatted, it is the desire of the heart, that it's an inner feeling.
So I think Rashi in Mishlei goes like you. This is definitely an approach that is adopted by early commentators. And they say, like, I think it's similar to what you're saying. It's that, well, when you want something, it comes from a very deep place. And like when you sort of have that wish fulfilled, when you really want something, that fulfillment sort of, it hits a very special place. Like if you wanted something really badly, so that desire comes from somewhere deep within, almost like your soul, and it fulfills your soul in a place of fulfillment. Definitely an approach that people take. I wanted to take a slightly different one. And I'm not negating what he said, it's 100% accurate. But in the context of what we say about the golden calf, we're going to watch this. This is awesome. Let's go really off the deep end, all right? What makes you, you? Like, you know, I'm Rabbi Lister, we've got Jeff Rubenstein, Howard Grant, David Benashi, we've got Sass, lots of people on tonight. What makes us different? Why am I not Neil? Why am I not Wendy? You know, what makes us different? Any thoughts?
It's a mixture of physical and mental.
Go on.
Well, physically, we obviously look alike, and mentally, we subscribe to some things and not to others. And the fact that we don't all subscribe to the same thing makes us different and gives us individual personality.
I like that. I like that. I've never had that answer before in this talk. I like that a lot. The answer I usually get, the answer that usually people say, is based around people's past. And it could be past in terms of their age, it could be past in terms of their experiences, it could be lots of things that basically center around the theme of the past. And it's a very tempting avenue to take when drawing distinctions between people. You know, I was born here and you were born there, and we went to this school and that school. It's very tempting. And I think to a degree, we are defined by our past. You know, like I'm only here sharing this idea because, you know, I walked into the room and sat down and opened up my laptop and did all these things. So to a degree, yes, we are a product of our past. There's a certain contemporary Eastern philosopher who gives a very compelling analogy to the way that we relate to our past. And he says that if you have a boat that's traveling over water and it leaves a trail behind it, does that trail define where the boat's going? Does that trail have any meaningful input into what that boat is doing now? The answer is of course not. That trail behind the boat is simply an indicator, it's a map of where it's been. You know, but it doesn't guide the boat any more than the tail of a dog wags the dog. And he says it's the same thing with us. You know, we might look back and see a trail behind us, but to think that that has any bearing on what we can do going forward is absurd. And I like this. And I don't think it's a purely secular idea, because the word ani means I, means the self in Hebrew, but it also means a boat. And I think with this image in mind, it makes perfect sense that where I am going isn't defined or informed by my past. Sass, did you raise your hand? Hello? Are you on mute?
Sorry, the reality is that the trail we leave behind is the line that other people follow afterwards.
Ah, very true. Very true. And yes, in that sense, it definitely has significance. And I'm not saying it doesn't have significance. And yes, the impact that your life will have on others is very important. But I want to really get into that trail. I really want to get into the wake of that ship, because I think it's more than just a testament to where you've been. And this is really going to get into the bottom of what makes us us. So we're going deep this week, folks. We're going way deep, because if it's not the past, if we're going to accept my premise that it's not the past purely that defines us, so what is it? And I wonder if more accurate, it would be more accurate to say that that ship, or that trail behind the ship isn't, the ship isn't guided by its trail. The ship is guided by a series of decisions. Meaning that trail doesn't testify necessarily to where it's going to go. And it doesn't merely testify to where it's been, but it shows the decisions that were made that lead up to this point. And to put it simply, we're not defined by our past, we're defined by decisions. And the decisions you make ultimately make you who you are. And so let's go another step. We've said that what makes you you? Well, it's not your past, it's your decisions. Well, if it's your decisions, well, how do you make a decision? How does anyone decide anything ever? And the answer is, well, let's take a guy who wants to get fit.
Your decision is based on your experience.
Yes.
I suppose is built up from your past.
Definitely, yes. And you're right. I mean, we can't reject the past entirely. It's definitely the canvas on which things are painted. And it's the sort of fabric that we refer to going forward. But I think the decisions, those tiny points, these sort of crossroads that you come up to in your life and decide to go left or right, these are what define us. And I think the way you make a decision is by what you want the most. So you have a guy who's sitting on the couch and he wants to get fit, but he also wants to eat pizza. Now, what's going to win out? What's going to inform that decision?
It's experience. It's experience.
It's experience? Go on. What do you mean by experience?
You can only make decisions based on your past experience.
But what does your experience tell you?
The choices that you're going to make may be good or bad. They may not be the ones you should make, but you can only judge what they're going to be. You can only make a decision at a particular point based on what you've experienced in the past.
Right, but what does that experience contain? That experience will contain a good or bad outcome. You're right. Like the past is wrapped in sort of experiences. Experiences can be almost like a measure of your past. It can be a unit of your past. But what's inside that experience? It was the result. It's something that good or bad, that happened to you, and you draw on that to inform your next decision. But ultimately, that your experiences are building up, they're amounting to something that you want. If you had a negative experience doing something, then you're not going to make that decision again because you don't want that. If you led a crazy unhealthy lifestyle, you had a horrendous experience with the medical fallout of that. Well, yeah, you had a bad experience, but ultimately that experience told you that this is something you don't want. If you had a good experience with something, well, that good experience is telling you something that you do want. So you're right, experiences definitely play a part, but experiences, I think more fundamentally, are shaping an idea of what you do and don't want. I think experiences are on the most fundamental level. You make a decision by what you want. Go for it, David.
Yeah, well, there is, of course, the school of thought that I don't necessarily subscribe to, that we are just a bunch of chemicals and we really don't have much of an option when it comes to making decisions, because there's chemical reactions that take place inherited via our DNA or whatever will overwrite anything else. As I said, I don't necessarily agree with that, but that I've heard that.
As a Jew, for many reasons, we must reject that.
Yeah,
the most obvious one, the Torah says, "Uvacharta b'chayim," you shall choose life. And baked into that pasuk, that part of the Torah, is the implication that we do make choices. And if you're going to say that the world has an intelligent creator with a goal at the end of it and all this, it's a deeper discussion, but we must accept the fact that we can make decisions. And I put it to you this evening that ultimately what helps us make our decisions is our priorities. So let's work it all the way back up the chain. We said, what makes you you? We said it's probably not your past. And as a Jew, I must also add, it can't be that we're beholden to our past. It can't be that we're constructs of our past, because we believe in teshuvah. We believe in repentance. So if you're beholden to your past, if you're a product of your past, then there's no room to be free from that with teshuvah.
Yes, there is.
Yes, I disagree as well.
Go on then.
There is. You can do it. You can make choices regardless of your past. As you just said yourself, you can do teshuvah.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm just proving that we can't be purely products of our past, because we would never really be able to break free from that. And this is all part of the choices that you're saying. Agreed, 100%.
But we are breaking by breaking new ground, making a decision. It's based on our past for something that you're quite right that we want. But it's an inbuilt thing. I think that we are, God made us to be free thinking.
Yeah, definitely. So we're definitely on the same page here, folks. So the past is not this rigid thing that funnels us forward, and we make decisions, based on what we want. So if we're going to say that you are your decisions and you make decisions by what you want, well, let's go back to the two meanings of the word nefesh now. Nefesh means a soul, and it also means to want something. And the train of thought that we've followed here, meaning that your decisions inform your choices and your choices make you who you are, suddenly shows us that the word nefesh, meaning a soul, and the word nefesh, meaning to want something, aren't so far apart after all. Meaning you are at the most, on a most fundamental level, one of the most fundamental levels, you are a set of priorities, because your priorities inform your decisions and your decisions inform who you are. So if we were to really break down what makes us so different, one could almost say that what we are is a series of different priorities. And I don't think this is so radical. What speaks to Howard, what's a very focal point for Howard, might not be the same for me. I might have something that I value going forward. And another outcome of this, by the way, is that if you are only, your identity is only formed of decisions that you made, then if something was done to you that you had no input in, that means that that's not really part of your identity. And I was a bit worried by this claim, because that's a bold thing to say.
But it's part of your experience.
It is part of your experience, but do you have to take that on into your identity? When we look at you as a real, on a real fundamental level, that may have happened to you, but is that you? Is that inherently you?
Going back to what you said, every experience in life molds us. We are who we are because of the experiences, good, bad, and indifferent. And if somebody has a bad experience, that's still part of the molding process, just as much as the good ones are.
It is. I'm going to develop this slightly more. First, I need to go hopping mad again. You ready for this? We all learn in school that the good old Esau, Esau back in the day, he comes in, he's hungry, and he wants to have some soup. And look at here, source number 5. Vayoma Esau el Yaakov, and Esau says to Yaakov, Haliteni no min ha'adoim ha'adoim hazeh. Give me some of that red stuff to gulp down. Ki oyef anoichi, for I am famished. Al kain kara shemai Edom. And so, as a result of Esau wanting to have some red soup, the Pasuk calls him Edom. Edom, by the way, meaning red. Everybody on board with me? Makes sense? It's nuts. It makes zero sense. Because the Torah, all of a sudden, has had a good idea. Oh, I got it. He wanted red soup. Let's call him red. All right? Get this. 5 Pasukim earlier. 5. It says, in source number 6, Vayetze harishon admaini kuloi ka'aderes sehar vayikra shmai Esau. And when Esau was born, he emerged red, like a hairy mantle all over. So they named him Esau. Don't call him red because he wanted red soup. Call him red because he's flaming red. He's been red his whole life. And the Torah has woken up all of a sudden because he wanted some red soup. We got it, folks. The committee has come to an agreement. We're calling him bright red. Oh, come on, guys. Are you seriously waking up to this right now as soon as he wants soup? He's red. And the answer is exactly what we're saying. It's because he might have been born bright red. He might have been the reddest guy on the block for 15 years. But bottom line is, that's not what the Torah considers to be your identity until you make a decision that revolves around something red. You might be bright red, but that's external. It's extraneous. It's something that's happened to you. You have made no conscious decision to absorb that as part of your persona and identity. But the second you want something red, oh, the Torah says you're red, because you're not what you're born as. You're not what's happened to you anywhere near as much as you are what you choose to be. And guess what, folks? It's not just me that's saying this. Carl Gustav Jung, the famous Swiss psychologist, I am not what happened to be. I am what I choose to become. And this is exactly what we're saying here, folks. You, your person, your identity, and I'm talking really fundamentally, you are what you choose to become. You're a set of priorities. You're a value system. Because your value system informs your choices, and your choices tell us who you are today. Now, we are going to have to explore this.
Isn't it your emunah?
Sorry?
Isn't it your emunah?
What do you mean, isn't it your emunah?
How you are inside, your soul, your belief, your faith.
Yeah.
We're told that everything is preordained, everything is pre-planned, but isn't it what we put into it as individuals,
100%.
how we become?
100%.
No matter.
But how do you choose what to put into it as an individual? And we're going to get back to this. This is what David Menashe is holding on to us for. We're going a full circle, guys. Yeah, don't bail on me just yet. You know, it's only week 3 of Parsha. You still should be nice. Just saying. But yeah, basically, 100%. You're right. It's emunah. It's sort of a personal input, a personal drive. But how do you decide what you're going to put in as opposed to what I'm going to put in? We put in different things. You know, there's this commentator that says that when the Torah was given, there was each Jew who received the Torah got a letter of the Sefer Torah. But, you know, every letter has a different context and a different meaning. You know, we all have an incredibly unique role to play. And part of that uniqueness, part of what differentiates us from everyone else is, I suspect, on no small level, your set of priorities. So we now are at a stage where we might just be able to answer the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard out of a Sefer Torah, which is what we started with. You know, how on earth, let's go back right to the beginning. We asked, how is it possible that the Jews are dancing around the golden calf and they're saying, Eileh Elohecha Yisrael, this is your God Israel? How is that possible? So watch this. It's not just my question. The Kasav Sofer asks this question, and in very strong terms, he basically just says, what on earth is going on? Like, how is it possible? How are they so stupid to consider that this golden figurine is God? And he says that you don't understand. Why did the Jews leave Egypt? Why did they leave? And there was a group of people called the Erev Rav, and before they made the golden calf, they gathered everyone together. They said, listen, guys, we need to be honest with you. We know why you left Egypt. The reason why you left Egypt is because hundreds of years before, when Abraham was told about the servitude that was going to happen, there was a promise. And hundreds of years ago, God said to Abraham, the Jews are going to be slaves in Egypt, but they're going to leave very wealthy. And so the Erev Rav, the mixed multitude, were not part of the Jewish nation. And they joined the Jewish nation because it was financially viable, because it was a good investment, because when the Jews walked out, they were walking out with a lot of cash. And guess what? This is what the Pasuk tells us. The Pasuk tells us in, it's up here, Shmos 12:38. V'gam Erev Rav ola itom v'tzayin uvakam miknei kaved ma'id. And the mixed multitude left Egypt with the Jews, very much livestock, both flocks and herds. So you see, part and parcel of the Erev Rav, the people who are making this idol, part of their plan to leave Egypt was based on money. Now, let's work out, I like doing this, let's work out how much money were the Jews actually getting for leaving Egypt. Well, the commentators say that each Jew left Egypt with 80 donkeys. Is that true? Yeah. 80 donkeys. Now, they carried on these donkeys gold, silver, and clothes. So let's take the middle value. You know, gold's the most expensive, clothes are the cheapest. Let's say there was 80 donkeys of silver. Now, how much can your average donkey carry? So I looked it up, and if Google is to be trusted, each donkey can carry about 50 kilos.
Excuse me, but where do you get this from? Because as I understand it, the Jews came out from Egypt and certainly weren't rich. And to have 80 donkeys worth of silver and gold, I find very difficult to believe.
If you look at the Pesukim say that God commanded the Jewish people to go to the Egyptians and ask for gold, silver, and clothing. And this was supposed to be a payment for the 200 years of slavery that the Jews had went through. So the Egyptians, basically, the end of 210 years, paid the Jews for all the work for the previous generations. And furthermore, the Egyptians, after chasing after the Jews and drowned in the Yam Suf in the Red Sea, they carried, for some inexplicable reason, all their gold and silver with them. And Hashem worked it out that all the gold and silver washed up on the banks of the Red Sea, and the Jewish people also got all of that. So they really walked out very, very wealthy. Now, the commentators say that this amounted to 80 donkeys a person, 80 donkeys, and let's say they were all carrying silver 50 kilos. A kilo of silver is about 560 pounds. So you got 50 kilos of silver at 560 pounds a kilo on 80 donkeys. It's about 2.24 million pounds. So if someone said to you, you know, you've been a slave for the past 210 years, do you want to leave Egypt? I'll give you 2.24 million. You'll walk out. So the Erev Rav gather the people together and they say, we know why you left Egypt. You left Egypt for the money. You didn't follow God in this blind faith. You didn't follow him for his values or for the promise of a higher spiritual standing. You followed God out of Egypt into the wilderness because your broker advised you to. It was a good financial decision. So come, Jews, let's be real for a second. Let's make a golden calf and let's worship the thing that you really value. Let's value the thing that is most important. And you know what? About 30,000 Jews said, you're right. We left for the money. And what you see here is how far your priorities inform your worldview. Your priority could almost be called your God. And Dr. Jordan Peterson is a Canadian psychologist. He says the most spine-tingling thing. He says, in source number 8 here, all people serve their ambition. In that matter, there are no atheists. There are only those who know and don't know what God they serve. And this is exactly what the Kesav Sofer is saying, that your God can be described as that which is highest on your list of priorities. And remember, your list of priorities inform your decisions, and your decisions make you who you are. And this is what they're saying. Eile Elohecha Yisrael means it's not God that's important to you. Ultimately, it's money. And, you know, there's a verse in Mishlei, in Proverbs, that says that you can judge a man, the ish lefi mahalalai. A man is tested by his praise. And this is where David comes in. David, we asked you at the beginning to think of someone you look up to. Doesn't matter who it is. And you thought of 3 reasons that you look up to this person. Would you like to share with the audience your 3 reasons?
Okay, one reason is that this person is altruistic. He thinks of his family, his friends, and the wider society. And he doesn't do it. He does it for no ulterior motives, as far as I can see. Second reason is that he's a clever guy. He's intelligent. He's worked out how to do certain things in life, and I can rely. If I asked him how something worked or whatever, he'd be able to tell me, and I'd be able to trust that that was good advice. And the third thing is that he's a fun and pleasant person to be with, and he has a good disposition and doesn't make me feel miserable, makes me feel happy.
Nice. So David said that the person he looks up to is someone who is altruistic, who gives to other people, someone who's intelligent and then uses his intelligence to help other people. And he's also someone with a pleasant demeanor and a pleasant disposition. Fair enough?
Yep.
Now, David, would I be correct in saying that being altruistic is important to you, and having a pleasant demeanor is important to you, and being intelligent and helping other people is important to you?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Yes.
And
yes.
I bet if we went round all the people here on Parsha Pulse and said, who do you look up to and why? Odds are we'd come up with completely different people with completely different reasons. And this isn't anything new. This is exactly what this verse, this pasuk in Mishlei is telling us. A man is tested by his praise, meaning you can tell who a person is by who they look up to and why. Because we don't know it, but not only do our priorities form what we call God, but they also inform who we look up to, who we base our lives around, who we orient ourselves towards. Because ultimately, someone who reflects your value system is someone who connects to you on an incredibly deep level.
But your priorities change during your life. They're not constant.
Exactly. 100%. 100%. We have the ability to change our priorities. And this is what teshuvah is. This is what repentance is. Repentance is a chance to shift your value system, to recalibrate what's important to you in the correct way, in the correct alignment.
But you may choose not to. You may choose not to repent. You can choose
100%.
whatever priorities you like.
You are free to set up your own value system, 100%. You have the choice to do that. But get this, we said that the word nefesh and the word ratzon mean the same thing. So when we see the word nefesh, we have to be thinking in the back of our heads, maybe it means a ratzon. So watch this, and this is magical. We say every day, 3 times a day in Shema, V'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha, b'chol levovacha, with all your heart, u'v'chol nafshecha, and with your whole soul. Now, the word soul can mean a life. And typically, we would understand all the classical interpretations of the word nefesh in that context mean you have to give up your life for the service of God. But as 21st century Jews, thank God, we live in peaceful times, and it's strange to us almost to think of having to give up our lives for God. But when we look at this alternative translation of the word nefesh, to mean a ratzon, to mean to want something, it doesn't mean to serve God by giving up your life. It means serve God with a value system. Do your priorities reflect a godliness? When you look at the things that are most important to you, is that godly? Is that spiritual? Or are we just running after money and worldly pleasures? But b'chol nafshecha means, choose a value system that's godly, that's spiritual, that's meaningful. And we say at the end of Amidah, was for Simon Daber Mimra. We ask God that we shouldn't say bad things. Velim kalalai nafshi sidon. And to those that curse me, nafshi, my soul, should be silent. Interesting. What does it mean that your soul should be silent? And with this, it makes perfect sense. It's not necessarily talking about a song. It means a value system. It means that there are people that are going to say, you're a religious Orthodox Jew in the 21st century. That's backwards. That's archaic. That's dark ages. It's a outdated, irrelevant religion. And we pray that Vilim Kalalai, those that curse me, Nafshi Sidon, my value system should remain undisturbed, unchanged. Because the value systems get attacked, they get criticized, and we ask for the strength to stay true to an honest and good value system. So we've established that the word nefesh can mean a ratzon because what you want on the most fundamental level makes you who you are. And we've realized that when we say in Shema v'chol nafshecha, we should serve Hashem with all your soul, it can mean a value system. And we ask for the strength that our value system should remain unwavering in the face of criticism. Sas, go for it.
But if you go back to verse 3, we're talking about Pharaoh that is chasing down the Jews that wants to kill them. It's in his heart. The nafshi in that verse relates to someone deep in their heart that wants to literally get them back and put the sword to them. That's somebody that isn't having a rat sword. It's in his heart to literally get them back and kill them, basically.
Yeah. So this is the idea that you ran with from the start is very true. In that, yes, when you have a ratzon, it can come from a very deep central place within you, and I'm not negating that, but I just think that when we apply it to sort of a value system informing an identity, I think that's just another beautiful angle that emerges from the duality contained in the nefesh. And you're right, you're 100% right. That yes, when Paro was chasing the Jews, he wanted that really badly, 100%. So we've shown that a person can have their God formed by values, that a person can have their role models, as David pointed out, formed by values. But there's also something else. And this is where we have to introduce you to Yossi. You don't know Yossi. I know Yossi. Yossi is an American boy who I met in yeshiva. This guy, he's unbelievable. At 16 years old, this boy Yossi was getting dropped off to school, except he wasn't going to school. He had a car waiting for him, and he'd go around the back, get in the car, and he ran a lighting business. At 16 years old, he was bunking school to go to hotels and sell them lighting. And they couldn't believe their eyes when they'd be dealing with a CEO of a company, and in walks in a little 16-year-old Jewish boy, and he's selling them lighting. And he was completely gifted with money. And he came to yeshiva where I met him. And yeshivas, it's not a place where people work and make money. It's a place where they study Torah and they work on bettering themselves. And he was so focused on his money making that he started to fall out of sync with the yeshiva. And his roommate told me he had a picture of Donald Trump on his desk in yeshiva. He would wake up every morning, look at the picture of Donald Trump and say, let's go make money. And he didn't look up to Donald Trump for anything to do with politics, purely the fact that this guy was a successful entrepreneur. This was the guy that he looked up to. You know, David Menashe is looking up to altruistic, kind, happy people. And this guy just adored Donald Trump. And it's because fundamentally they were so different. But get this, I had a really, really hard time connecting to Yossi. He was a sweet kid. He really was. He gave so much tzedakah. He really did. But his value system was so different to mine. I couldn't connect to the dude. Nothing against him. And there are people that we connect to in a really deep way. And ask yourself, is it because you share values? Is it because your nefesh can connect to that guy's nefesh or that person's nefesh? And if there's someone that you're really struggling to connect to, ask yourself, is it because we're just so different? Now, I want to just say a happy ending to this story. There was a gifted teacher in my yeshiva who saw that Yossi spent every afternoon in a cafe in Jerusalem as the American working day was starting, running his business. You know, he was in the morning when Americans were still asleep, because Israel-America time worked out like that. He would sort of wake up late and flow around yeshiva or whatever. And then as soon as the working day in America started, he was off running his business. So he really wasn't engaging with yeshiva. And one of the teachers there, one of the rabbis said to him, do you want to learn the laws of lending money in Judaism? And this guy overnight switched. He was one of those dedicated students in the building. And he was on fire with it, because the rule is in Judaism, you're not allowed to lend money to another Jew with interest. But what about things like foreign exchange? Let's say you lend money in shekels to someone in England who's got pounds. And then by the time you want to pay back the same amount of shekels, the currency conversion is different. Is that considered lending with interest? You know, what about Bitcoin? if you lend money in Bitcoin? What's the deal with that? And this teacher realized how integral money was to this person and just gave him an avenue to channel that nefesh, that ratzon, that value system in a Torah way. But when all was said and done, as much as I admired Yossi for the amazing things he did, I couldn't connect to him. I just don't have that same financial drive. If you don't believe me, I'm an assistant rabbi in the United Synagogue, so that's all the proof you need, really. And get this. This is something that also bothered me for a while. This is a pasuk in Shemos. It says, "Vayakam melech chadash al Mitzrayim asher lo yada es Yosef." A new king arose over Egypt who didn't know Joseph. And there was a king of Egypt in Joseph's time. And it seems to be that there is now a new king, a new man on the block, and he doesn't know Joseph. So there's a bit of a dispute as to what this means. Rav and Shmuel disputed the meaning of this verse. One said this was a new king, and one said this was the same king. He just changed his laws. Now, according to the first opinion, the pasuk says, the Torah says, a melech chadash, a new king, and guess what? It's a new king. Never seen this guy, new on the block, fair play. But according to the second opinion, the Torah is telling us this was a new king, and it doesn't mean that. It means it was the same king, but he changed his laws.
The new king who didn't want to know Joseph.
The new king who didn't want to know Joseph, right. But according to the second opinion here, as to what this verse is referring to, it's referring to the same king. He's just got new laws now. Now, very nice, but that's the same guy. That's not a melech chodosh. And the answer is, according to what we're saying now, that maybe it is a new king. Maybe when you change your laws, when you change what's important, when you have an entire reshuffle of your value system, maybe you are a brand new person. And this is what the Jewish people had the opportunity to do when it came to the golden calf. They were faced with the reality that they had left Egypt for the money. And they had an opportunity to turn into not a repentant person, not a better person, but a brand new person. How? By shifting their priorities. And look what they did with that gold. They gave it away to the Mishkan. The answer to the golden calf is the Mishkan. It's your money is so important to you. You want to be a new person. You want an answer to the golden calf, that claim that you only left Egypt because it was financially viable. Put it towards the temple service. Put it towards something spiritual. Change that value system. Use that money not for your own personal gain, but for the spreading of spirituality, the conduit of spirituality in this world. So we got to be very careful with our value system. V'chol nafshecha. In Shema, when we're told to serve Hashem with all our soul, it can also mean to serve Hashem with a value system. David has proven to us that your value system informs your role models and who you look up to. And to change your value system, for better or worse, is to make you an entirely new person. So careful what you wish for, folks. It's going to happen.